Welcome to Health Hats, the podcast. I'm Danny Van Leeuwen, a two-legged cisgender old white man of privilege who knows a little bit about a lot of healthcare and a lot about very little. We will listen and learn about what it takes to adjust to life's realities in the awesome circus of healthcare. Let's make some sense of all of this. About 30 years ago, I worked for a behavioral health managed care company. We put together a provider advisory panel and a member advisory panel. It was fairly novel at that time. And we pulled these groups together to get direct feedback about our services. And one of the issues that both groups had in common was the onerous nature of pre-authorization. So what that meant is when a member, a patient, went to a provider, a psychologist, a psychiatrist, a social worker, they had to call a call center and get 7 or 10 visits authorized before treatment could start. They found this really onerous. And we looked into it and realized it cost us quite a bit to staff the call centers to manage and deal with appeals and everything. And so we did an experiment of 6 months of no pre-auth needed. You get automatically 10 visits. Maybe it was 7, but something like that. 7 or 10 visits. And we found that there was worry about abuse, that people would take advantage of it, but that didn't happen. People were much more satisfied with the service. Our workflow was much easier. I learned a lot. I learned a lot about listening to people with lived experience. So whether it's the members or the providers, lived experience with our services, and then making a change based on their feedback and seeing the results of it. I worked at the Boston Children's Hospital. I led the Patient Family Experience Initiative. Where I learned the most was in the adolescent services. So it's a children's hospital, and there's a large cohort of adolescents who were still considered children, but very different. A 15-year-old is very different from a 2-year-old. And they had an adolescent advisory panel. And it was interesting in several ways. One was that the emerging adults, adolescents, on the advisory panel really had a lot to say about the services they received. And they were able to welcome new young adults, emerging adults, to the service and help them navigate. It was also interesting because people grow out of adolescence. They become adults. They're no longer emerging. And so part of the process or the function of the advisory panel was to identify and mentor new, younger participants on the advisory panel. I worked for an organization as director of quality management, an organization that both provided behavioral health services and managed the behavioral health services for an insurance company. And one of the measures that we had was outpatient follow-up within 30 days after an inpatient discharge. It was a quality measure we were required to track as part of NCQA, the National Committee for Quality Assurance that monitors health plans. And frankly, we stunk. I think it was something like 17% of inpatient discharges were followed up within 30 days in outpatient. And at first we made the attempt to fix that on our own, and we weren't really successful. So my boss, who was the executive director, pulled together a community initiative, an integrated community initiative that included emergency department, first responders, paramedics, EMTs, firefighters, police, social services, housing, food banks, and began to work on this together and identified people who cycled through services, were heavy users of services, and did some coordinated case management. So that was pretty interesting in bringing people together for integrated support of people who are having behavioral health crises. And our outpatient follow-up within 30 days after an inpatient discharge went from that 17% to something like 75%. Quite a success. I also worked at an organization that supported about 23,000 people with disabilities. And they had people that we supported on our board and on every committee, operations committee, governance committee. And I remember when I started working there, there was a gentleman who had some kind of paranoid schizophrenia, and he talked in kind of stream of consciousness, hard for me to understand. I went to my first board meeting, and he was on the board. And I was presenting some satisfaction survey results that people who were being cared for in our group homes were quite unhappy with those group homes. Our scores weren't very good. And this gentleman started talking, and he talked for a good 3 to 5 minutes, which sounded to me like stream of consciousness, and I really didn't understand. But what I noticed after about 30 seconds is that nobody looked troubled or nobody rolled their eyes. People seemed to be listening quite intently. And there was no interruption. And when this gentleman stopped, the medical director who was facilitating this board meeting stopped and said, "Well, you really had a lot to say there. Why don't we take a minute and just try to process what you said?" And there was a minute of silence. And I'm thinking, what is going on here? I was really startled. But after about 30 seconds, I started replaying what he said. And I could start seeing some threads in what he said. And after that minute, I realized, and what we realized together was that this gentleman was talking about how hard it was when people were residents in our group homes, that a staff person would leave and there would be no notice that that staff person left. And all of a sudden there'd be a new person or new people, and that it freaked people out. And it was such an insight. And it really was, we didn't ask any questions in our survey about that. But when we took what this gentleman said and just did the simple thing of letting people know that so-and-so caretaker or caregiver was leaving and, introduced to the new person, in no time, meaning the next time we did a survey, our results were dramatically better. So these are examples of the engagement and partnerships with people with lived experience who know process and are included in that process, whether they have whatever their abilities and challenges and communication styles. We need our young adults. We need our adolescents, our emerging adults, however we want to label that group of people who are between early, late preteen to mid-20s. We need them. We need them because those of us that are old, so I'm 70, and, I'm at the end of my life. And we as a society need so much. And we need our young people. And we need our young people to be healthy. You have to be living in a total bubble not to see how critical, how acute right now the state of the mental health of our young people are. It's been a problem for a long time, I think. But now, in this COVID world, it's even more so with the sort of warlike existence, warlike meaning really different from the norm that COVID has presented with us, the isolation, the lack of services, the professionals and frontline workers who are leaving their jobs or have died, a pandemic. So in this critical period for, the mental, social, emotional, spiritual development period, where brains are undergoing significant developmental changes, they're having new neural pathways and behavioral patterns that are going to last into adulthood. There are a lot of people in need. Now, the positive side of that is that adolescents are particularly receptive to the positive influences of youth development strategies, of social and emotional learning and behavioral modeling. But their developing brains, coupled with hormones, and make them way more prone to depression and more likely to engage in risky behavior. I want to better understand, what is life like now as an emerging adult? I can remember myself as an emerging adult, but that was a long time ago. And, I'm still a two-legged cisgender white man of privilege, which is representative of such a small slice. So I wanted to start this series on young adults with mental illness to better understand what it feels like, what people are going through, how support people, what they're trying to deal with, what are the forces. And I want to start with people with lived experience. So, meaning young adults or people who were recently young adults, and then parents and teachers, and then to professionals and community organizations and research. Now a word about our sponsor, Abridge. Record your healthcare conversations with doctors and other clinicians with Abridge. Push the big pink button and record. Read the transcripts or listen to clips when you get home. Check out the app at abridge.com, abridge.com, or download it on the Apple App Store or Google Play Store. Let me know how it went. So I started today's conversation telling you these stories about behavioral health, young adults, lived experience, and engagement, public engagement, to illustrate some of the formative experience I've had in my career, highlighted how important these areas are, and just increased my awareness and my sensitivity. In this podcast series, I'm going to be thinking about the sense of belonging, the sense of control, the sense of connection, trust, talk, stable home, confidentiality, access to supportive peers and adults, access to professional help, different kinds of treatment, inpatient, outpatient, home, family, school programs, self-management, tools that people have in their toolbox. Let's listen to 3 clips from the series. Amika Chima, a young man on the autism spectrum with paranoid schizophrenia, his mom, Erica Blair, and Annie Schneider, a young woman with severe depression. I'm grateful for their willingness, no eagerness, to share their experiences. I don't know what it feels like to have psychosis. What were you experiencing that you knew something is like really messed up here?
It all started in my junior year of high school. I was turning 16 the fall semester, and that's when things started going haywire. I was hearing voices, auditory voices, and I was seeing things like visual hallucinations. And I could not understand like what was happening to. I didn't even know what psychosis was at the time.
Right.
So I did not know what was happening to me. All I know is maybe I need help.
Okay. You heard voices, and at first they were just voices. You were hearing something, and then you realized, well, your mom's not hearing them, or other, kids in school aren't hearing them. They were voices to you.
Mm-hmm.
Man, that's really disconcerting.
Mm-hmm.
So that must have been like really lonely.
I felt alone probably 90% of the time. I knew I had my parents there. They were my best allies, but I don't think they'd ever know how I was feeling because they never dealt with schizophrenia. They never dealt with psychosis.
You must be proud of your son.
Very, very, very proud of him. I am so honored to have him as a son. He is not only a great help and support to myself and our family, but he has so much to give to others as well. It's just very inspiring.
So,
Emeka welcomes you speaking with me about your journey together.
Yes.
But there, it must have been a transition that happened
Yes.
from, everyday parent-child tension and conflict to this kind of teamwork that it seems like you have. Can you tell us something about that evolution?
Well, I guess we have to step back to when he was first diagnosed with schizophrenia, and he had his first onset, his first psychotic episode. It happened as a teenager, even before that. So he was diagnosed with autism as a child. I always kind of knew something was, there was some social and sensory thing, because academically, they felt like nothing impacted him academically. He never got any help from the school system. But he did end up having a psychotic break, because I think it was the combination of like the school is pushing him academically, and then the social, trying to fit in socially norm as a socially awkward teenager. It was very difficult. He had his first psychotic break. That was very devastating. It was scary because we didn't know what was going on. It was scary for him. He was terrified, scary for us as a family. And that's when he was first hospitalized. That came to his first hospitalization. That went on, this was about 16. He was hospitalized. It's very, very difficult time. I mean, as a parent, to see your child go through that, and he is such a wonderful child, to see your child suffering like that, it's the most heartbreaking thing. I was also pregnant at the time, with twins, and so it was really hard. Pregnancy, it was just a very, very difficult time. But I just made an effort. I wanted to get him better and get him help. That was my focus. That's all I wanted to do.
I can remember when I was 15, over 10 years ago, things were not right. And I was not really my best self in just a lot of ways. I was struggling a lot. And I think my parents noticed it in me first. But eventually I very quickly saw a lot of it. I was really unfocused in school. I had quick temper. I had just a lot going on that was not healthy. And of course, many people, when we're teenagers, of course, you have your mood swings and, all kinds of normal things. We're humans, we're all humans, but I was not like other 15-year-olds. So it turned into a lot of I had a lot of preoccupation and obsession with negative thoughts and negative thought patterns, and unfocused in school. My mom would report, later on I found out from my mom, she of course didn't tell me in the moment, but later on I found out, I kind of had a very glazed over look on my face and in my eyes a lot of the time. I didn't have a lot of, it sounds kind of cliche and kind of dumb, but I just didn't have a lot of my spirit. It was kind of a shell of myself.
Right.
Starting at 15, at least that was when it turned into a healthcare journey, to recover and get well.
All righty then. Thanks for joining me for this series introduction. Let's see what we can learn in the circus of healthcare. Bethany Yeiser of Cures, CURESZ, Comprehensive Understanding via Research and Education in Schizophrenia, introduced me to Emeka Chima, and Emeka introduced me to his Erica Blair. Cures envisions a future where schizophrenia and related psychoses are widely accepted as neurobiological brain conditions and can be prevented, treated, or cured with restoration of wellness and full functional recovery. The organization and website offers many resources, including treatment checklists, research, information about treatment, and a mentor network. The site provides guidance for clinicians, patients and families, and people like me seeking to learn. I especially like the treatment checklist that includes setting treatment goals. The quarterly newsletter provides a variety of useful information for any stakeholder. Check it out, CURESZ.org. write, edit, engineer, and produce Health Hats, the podcast. Kayla Nelson provides website and social media consultation and creates video trailers. Joey Van Leeuwen supplies musical support, especially for the podcast intro and outro. I play Barry sax on some episodes, alone, or with the Lechuga Fresca Latin Band. I'm grateful to you, who have the most critical roles as listeners, readers, and watchers. See the show notes, previous podcasts, and other resources through my website, www.health-hats.com, and my YouTube channel, @DVanLeeu, DVANLEEU. Please subscribe and contribute. If you like it, share it. See you around the block.